Then we have heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Here we have, there's a lot of items that can be included in the HVAC system, piping, pumps, equipment, air distribution systems, ducts, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of items that can be in there. Normally what I ask students to do is to identify the air handling units, identify the ductwork, and sometimes the piping system, if we have piping in the HVAC equipment. These systems or this equipment, what they do is they bring cold air or hot air, depending on the winter or summer conditions, into the room to make the conditions comfortable for people. Some units are self-contained, so you have one item that goes either through the window or through a wall. Those are counted items, so then you count how many of those you have and you do your estimate. Central systems, also used in residentials, may have what's called a split system, where you have an air handling unit inside the house and then you have a condenser or compressor outside. So then you need to run refrigerant lines from the air handling unit to the outside and make sure that those are included and accounted for. Then you have metal ducts that brings air into each one of the rooms. You have registers at each point of supply, like this one's here. We have 3, 4 of those in here that bring air. I don't feel any air right now, but I can hear the fan working, so hopefully the AC is working. We have the ducts or returns that takes the air back to the air handling unit. In residentials, we don't have a return duct. We use only the space to work as a return duct, but in some commercial applications, you may have a separate duct to take the air back into the air handling unit. The ductwork normally has a large, very large duct connected to the air handling unit, and then as it branches out, the size of the ductwork reduces. So you have different cross sections, different diameters. If it is circular, you have different shapes of that duct. So you need to have that included in your estimate as separate line items. There's also thermostats. There is sometimes outside air that is taken into the system for purposes of maintaining air quality. So, those are things that need to be included in your estimate also. Grills and registers, diffusers, there's different type of elements depending on the requirements of the architects. Here's some pictures of different diffusers. You can see they're in different colors, materials, shapes. So it depends on each one of those, because they're different, they have a different price. So you have to account for them separate line items in your estimate. Could be also different in metals. You can have different type of metals to fabricate these grills or registers. You can have different thickness. You can have different colors. So each one of those different items needs to be accounted for separate. Here's sort of a diagram of a residential system that I was talking about. You have the air handling unit inside the house, and then you have your compressor outside. So you have lines that go from inside to the outside. This is refrigerant that goes back and forth. So it goes through the cooling coil, the air comes in, gets out cold, and then it gets distributed inside the building using ductwork like this one. So you have the air handling unit, and then you have ducts that goes to a different room. Some of those are to supply air, so it brings air into those rooms. and others are to take that air back into the system. So you need to be able to identify those ducts and account for them. There are different type of systems, so you need to somehow get familiar with the system, the type of system there is. Some of those run refrigerant, some of those run cold water or hot water, depending if it is for winter and summer conditions or only summer. So you gotta be careful on the system that you're using. Commercial equipment, you may have rooftop units. These are self-contained units like the window type, but this goes mounted on the roof. And then from there, we have a supply duct that takes air into the different rooms, and then a return duct that takes that air back. What else? The trick with the duct systems is that they're usually fabricated from steel. You have galvanized steel, or you have aluminum, or sometimes in special applications you may have stainless steel. So what people do is they fold these sheets into shape, they close it, and then they install it. So one way to do the estimate is by calculating how much steel you need by weight. So you need to take the duct. Let's suppose we have a rectangular duct that goes somewhere like this. You take the length of that duct, you take the perimeter, right? And then multiply the length by perimeter so you get the surface area. And then you have a table that tells you how much does it weigh per square feet. So then you can find the weight of those ducts by multiplying the surface area by that factor, and then you get the weight. And then you will have a cost per pound or cost per ton, depending on what it is. Here's a picture where we can see, all that is going on that roof. We have suspended, well, there's no suspended ceiling here, but we have lights, we have HVAC system, we may have some water pipes that are running for the coils that are installed in the HVAC system. Then we have duct work. Then we have lines for the fire suppression system. So that's an area that can be very, very crowded and requires a special design. So oftentimes now they are designed in three-dimensional to prevent clashes, and people can have an idea of how exactly that is going to be installed before you get to the site. Here's some useful data for estimating. A ton of HVAC provides about 400 CFM. CFM is cubic feet per minute. So that's the amount of air that comes into the room. 800 BTU per square feet. It's another estimate that people use to size equipment. This is what I said before. Rectangular ducts are taken off by linear foot per size, and then that cost is estimated by pound. You take the surface area, multiply by the weight per square feet, and then you get the weight. Prefabricated sections are taken by pieces, so it's counted each. Here is a table that shows, kind of difficult to see, but this shows the weight in pounds per linear feet. So you have the duct, what is the dimension of the duct, length and height, and then that will tell you what is the square feet per foot, and depending on the gauge, the thickness of that duct, you get the weight per linear feet. Here's some information about metals that can be found on this website. Basically, you have different type of sheets and materials. So you click on one of those, and it tells you what different types there are. And I think this webpage, in some places, you get also cost per square feet, if I'm not mistaken. I found the cost here sometimes, and for reference. So that's you can use that link for reference. Any questions about mechanical? No? Then we have electrical. Electrical has lights, switches, receptacles, and so on. Cables, all the cables that go into the system. You basically have three main different type of categories in electrical. You have power distribution. This is high voltage distribution into the building. Then it branches out to the different rooms. And then you have lighting, which has a different branch also. These are different types of cables. You may have Romex, or you may have electrical distribution from the panels. Normally, what you do is you estimate linear feet of cables from the point of use to the panel, and then include conduits or trades depending on what you're running. Here is some of the most commonly used type of cables. So depending on what type of switch you have. We are not going to get down to this level of detail when doing our electrical estimate, but it's good to know that they have different gauges of cables, and you have to account for the different point of uses. Here's a picture where we have the electrical lights fixtures, and then we have cables that come into those fixtures from the switches using conduit. Conduit can be rigid conduit or can be flexible conduit. We have these junction boxes that we need to account for. So those are components of the electrical system. Here's a picture of cable trays that is mostly used in industrial applications. Then we have communications, telephones, speaker systems, distribution of audio and video cables. Those are very specialized and normally subcontracted. But you should be able to identify where those components are and how they will be installed, and if they need special electrical requirements. You may have also electronics for surveillance or alarms, monitoring and control. So those goes into Division 28. Then we have Division 31, Earthwork. This should be estimated earlier on because you normally do the excavation before you do the building. But and following the number system, this goes now into Division 31. Before it used to be in early division.
Dr. Faria,
Yeah.
I have a question. Someone told me that to kind of hide your cost, or not hide it, but like where the most difference in cost happens is in the site work and probably the earthwork. Like, it was a contractor that was telling me.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, most of us, because the lighting won't change much, the masonry won't change much. He was telling me, like, there's certain things that are, like, not much difference, that
Sure.
the most...
More different, I'm sorry, let me understand, most different from one contractor to another one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what he was telling me. He
Okay.
was like, you'll see when the bids come in, that's where the most... For example, maybe they don't want to put their fee. They say that their fee is distributed among everything, and they hide the fee in site work or something like that. Have you seen that happen?
Well, that's a decision that a company will do. I've seen that happen when I was working in a couple of different projects, and it's true. What happened is that the strategy of some people is to put their fees or their profit, right, what they're making in certain areas that are not so obvious to the owner. So you may have, a component that is very standard. For example, this chair. So, you know how much it is. You can find it very easily, and if you get 10 quotes, very likely they will be about the same price, right? But if you have to actually manufacture it, or you have to do something that is different, that you have to put your people and your equipment and your knowledge, then that's a lot more difficult to make the exact same for everybody. And then people tend to put their cost over there. When some projects that I worked before, the problem that we saw is that we allowed the customer to pick and choose. They had the option of buying this but not buying that. And then if your profit is in that and they don't choose it, you're dead.
Oh, yeah.
And that happened to us a couple of times. So they say, oh, you have great prices over here. They bought them and say, oh my God, of course we didn't put the profit there, we put it over there, and they didn't buy it. So, that's something to think about also. But not always happen. It depends on how the contract is, how the negotiation goes. Sometimes you get the whole package, like it or not, you gotta buy the whole thing. So then it becomes this, you say, well, yeah, these guys are not charging too much here, but then they are charging over there. So it may be to that extent. Then we have exterior improvements, plants, wetlands, irrigation, planting, and so on. These are also sometimes done at the end. But you do have to be careful. I remember, I don't know if I said that story here, but I had a guest speaker coming in from a large construction company, and they were telling us that they make this huge building, beautiful residential building and so on. When they were about to turn that into the owner, somebody said, well, how do you, how do you irrigate these plants that you have on the outside? I said, well, we have a system that brings water to those plants. They had it on the drawings, but they didn't put it in. They forgot about it. So then they had to break all the sidewalk and the concrete structure that they had to bring in these pipes, and it was a big mess just because they somebody overlooked that piping system. So be careful. Utilities, we have water utilities, sanitary sewage utilities. Those are normally done at the beginning of the project with the earthwork. You need to open a trench, then you need to put a base of sand or rock, then put your piping in, your utilities, and backfill and compact. Those are done normally before the building is made, so they're usually at the beginning. Electrical power generation or distribution has to be done also at the beginning.